At MedStory, we take privacy seriously and follow all healthcare privacy laws. Some details may have changed to protect confidentiality. The views expressed are solely of the individual speaking and do not represent the views of their employer.
I don't know that it was any one person's fault because I understand why they came to that decision point, but this is a clear signal that the medical system that we are all in is incredibly broken. And it's not just the money that we constantly talk about. It's not just the wait times. It's really impacting people in immediate ways that is incredibly heartbreaking.
Welcome to the MedStory Podcast, a show where we share the stories of the greatest minds in science and medicine. I'm Spencer Locke, and on the show today, how Dr. Hilary Lin used entrepreneurship and technology to disrupt a broken healthcare system and democratize access to personalized health and longevity care. You may have heard me say this before, but the hardest part about building a business isn't the product. It's the personal conviction to see it through, especially when you have to walk away from everything that you've been taught. The traditional healthcare system is one of the most powerful institutions in the world, and most doctors believe that if you want to fix it, then you have to do it from the inside. They spend a decade or more in training, following the golden path of academic and research medicine, convinced that one day will rise to a position of influence and create the change that they want. Now here's something to think about. What if the system itself is the problem? Today, Dr. Hilary Lin is known for CareCore, a platform designed to democratize access to personalized health and longevity care. But her path there wasn't obvious. At the time, the dominant idea was that healthcare was a one-on-one, in-person practice, with its processes defined by insurance and bureaucracy. Dr. Lin seemed unlikely to succeed because she had to walk away from that professional prestige and the security that came with being a physician in the traditional system, leaving behind her golden path to start from scratch. She grew up in a family with over a dozen doctors, a background that initially planted the seed for her to follow in their footsteps and become a physician herself. And that is where her story really begins.
I come from a family of over a dozen doctors, so it's been a long familial tradition. I'm from Taiwan, and I grew up hearing stories of my father, my grandfather, my great-great-grandfather. I guess you could say I'm the first female physician to enter the group, but if you were to see like a family gathering at Christmas, I remember once counting over 12 specialties represented. And so it was more that it took a while for me to discover what the world was like outside of medicine. And I'm sure we're going to get into that, but I grew up into medicine from a certain perspective, and it took me my early career to understand the context in which medicine lives today. When I went into medicine, I truly did love it for a lot of the reasons why everyone who goes into medicine loves it, like the science, the biology. I have an incredible fascination with what goes behind all of our functions, our physiologic functions. Like I think about it all day long. It drives my partner absolutely insane. And so that aspect of it was always there. And I love the nobility and the narrative that we go into medicine for, which is we want to serve others, we want to help others. I think what was striking to me, and this is because despite having a lot of doctors in my family, I didn't grow up with any of them. I grew up with my mom as a single mom in the US, and I actually didn't see any doctoring happening, even though I had so many relatives who were doctors. So it took me until I was in medical school to realize some of the practical things about medicine that are less than favorable, which are our practice in America especially, but I think worldwide is severely restricted by the way the monetary financial infrastructure is set. So the payer system and the types of careers that we're taught to aspire to. I was lucky to be educated a wonderful academic system, but you get indoctrinated in a way to think that being a research or academic physician, so to speak, is the golden path and that there isn't really any other way to be the best doctor. And so it took me a long while through my entire training path and a little bit afterwards to really disentangle what was simply being indoctrinated or brainwashed into my brain versus what I really felt like might be the best way to serve people as a physician, as a founder, as an educator. So yeah, it's been a journey.
Was there a moment where you realized that the system that you were indoctrinated in just wasn't enough and that you wanted to do something more?
Oh, yeah. It's always hard to find one clear moment, but I'll mention a couple of examples. So I remember when I was in residency, and it's both a wonderful and terrible time because terrible for all the obvious reasons. You are degrading your own health and not sleeping, and it's miserable. But wonderful because that's the first time you get to practice as a physician. You get to do so all over the hospital system. One of the things that I came to realize while working in different departments is how much perverted the system has become. I truly don't think this is the fault of any individual I'm going to be alluding to, but I remember once I was in the ER and there was a dying older man and he clearly was going to die. There was a tiny percentage chance that we might have been able to stabilize him by doing an invasive procedure in the ER. The point is that it seemed clear to me that the best thing to do for that family would have been to sit them down and really talk them through this dying process. Instead, what ended up happening was a fairly intensive invasive procedure. He died immediately, essentially, and his family was just distraught for obvious reasons. And I think that really pointed to me, I'm like, wow, I don't know that it was any one person's fault because I understand why they came to that decision point, but this is a clear signal that the medical system that we are all in is incredibly broken. And it's not just the money that we constantly talk about. It's not just the wait times. It's like really impacting people in immediate ways that is incredibly heartbreaking. And so I wanted to move out of that somehow and to lead a different kind of movement in the field of healthcare and medicine. And I did try for some time to find a way in the health system to become a leader within academic medicine, as we are all taught is the way. I eventually realized that no one doctor can do that from within the system. There's a slightly larger chance that a doctor entrepreneur might be able to do so from without the traditional system. And that's what led me to what I'm doing today.
So you came to the realization being like, if I want to make the change that I want to make at a scale that I want to make it at, I need to do something different. It's not going to happen from within. So you're practicing full-time, I'm guessing, in a hospital, a clinic. So what was your next steps to step from employed doctor to entrepreneur?
It was a very, very crazy sort of moment where I think I had just had enough. I was working in oncology, and interestingly, by coincidence, I happened to be sleeping more than I used to. And so I think that I say that because it gave me the brain space and bandwidth to really think about my life and what I was doing. And so it wasn't anything to do with my workplace at the moment. I was working with lovely other oncologists. But I realized that no matter how hard I worked and how far I took it, I wasn't going to be able to really move the needle. The opportunity came about where a friend essentially wanted to start a company with me. And that was the first of many adventures in the startup world. I took the leap and it was incredible. And I actually spent a couple of years away from any clinical practice. I actually took a hard look. I was like, if I leave the traditional path, will I have the time and space or the legitimacy even to practice again? And I came to the decision that even if I couldn't, then I still wanted to take the chance. And I think that, even though it sounds a little extreme because it turns out that it's not black and white, you can do both. It was important for me to get to the core of what I really wanted to do.
Tell me about those 3 years. Why was freeing up that space allowing you to get to that core?
I think all of us want to do everything. And I actually tried, even back in medical school and in residency, I tried to do things on the side that were a little bit more innovative, whether it was hackathons and workshops. I was at Stanford, and so there were plenty of opportunities to get involved, and they were all incredible experiences. But it is true that when you are working in a service-oriented industry, your time is incredibly captured by your work. And this isn't just physicians. I think anybody who has to be present in a one-to-one capacity, you're never able to be free enough to create something larger. And I think that dichotomy is what I struggled with a lot. Ultimately, I found a way where today I practice very little as a result. So I found the 95% ratio in the other direction. And I think it's the right balance for me, but it is also a hard decision to come to for a lot of doctors because you spend your entire adult lives training to be a clinician.
Throughout that time, from this transition here to that break, were there any lows or points in your life where you're like, I don't know if I can do this anymore?
I have never regretted it. It may be a strange thing to say because I do love seeing patients, but I never regretted the shift. And perhaps the reason is I'm still very much in touch with a lot of my friends who are practicing in traditional fields. They are beyond burnt out. So I don't think I have any sort of FOMO whatsoever talking with them. I have a couple who are very happy traditionally practicing doctors. So don't get me wrong. I think it can work. But I think as you get older, as for any field, whatever it is, you get to understand your own personality and your capacity and your desire to do certain things. And I'll point to this because it might sound a little woo for folks out there, but it is a pretty scientifically validated psychological test. The big 5 traits, the traits some of you may have heard, they are a set of traits like openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism. And if you test a lot of professionals, like lawyers and doctors have very particular set of characteristics, like very high agreeableness is one of them, and very low openness. And I just remember that I would test the complete opposite of what you might expect for a traditional doctor. And it has made sense to me over the years because I just don't have the personality type that fits into that box. I love a lot of aspects of medicine, but I just needed to find my place in the medical world in a very different way.
Yeah, I love that. So as you made this transition, I know you've done multiple ventures, but I really want to focus on the one that you're currently working on right now. And I want you to tell me about the story of the idea behind the creation of it.
Sure. So I built CareCore largely out of my own experience. So I was coming out of a prior venture, which was in the mental health space and was direct to consumer and in psychedelic assisted therapy, all of which I mentioned because it was very difficult. We were facing regulatory tensions. It was direct to consumer. And so you have a lot of growth concerns as well. And it's a field that's not accepted by mainstream medicine. And so from there, I was also growing my own expertise and my private practice in longevity medicine at that time. And I love longevity medicine. I could talk about it endlessly if of interest. But as I was doing so, I started my own content, essentially arm of my business, where I started making YouTube videos, LinkedIn posts, and so forth. And that started growing organically. Like I truly went into that without any expectation. I did it because I wanted to be very clear about what I was learning and discerning about the field. So, to give you a rough roadmap, what I was doing, I was reading scientific papers and looking at the startups and existing companies that were coming out in the space. I would do an analysis for myself, and then I would translate that into something that was more layperson friendly and turn that into content. And while doing all of that, I started gaining quite an audience, which I was pleasantly surprised by. And then at the same time, I was growing a private practice, which turns out I love the private practice, but the way I practice is so intensive that I can't see that many patients if I want to see them at the same level. And so here I am, I've got 2 hand-in-hand sort of jobs where one is extremely intensive, resource intensive, one-on-one care takes up so much, not only time, but mental bandwidth. And then the other where, yes, it's a lot of work to create quality content. But once you do, it's evergreen and millions of people can view it and can engage with it. And so I created CareCore out of this desire to bring a part of that deep, personalized longevity medicine care towards that audience that a content creator might build over the years that they build an audience. And so it was not that straightforward in the beginning. I'm happy to share. This actually came out of multiple ideas prior to this. So there were pivots in the journey where I was helping other clinicians who have longevity clinics. I was even working with someone in the M&A space, like looking at clinics to acquire and to build in AI native software. So there was a lot going on in the background, but all of those learnings came together to create what is now CareCore.
Any stories that stick out along that experience as you're developing this idea?
I think probably most significantly is I absolutely love all the doctors in this space because they are innovative and they are entrepreneurial, which is very rare. Like we were talking, it's kind of like a conglomerate of stories where even though everybody is wonderful, it's so hard to build something that fits every doctor's needs. And so that actually was the biggest trigger for me to be like, actually, I want to build something completely flipped on its head. Rather than creating like a practice management system or an EHR or like an AI co-pilot to help clinicians who are practicing in a different way, like in terms of its longevity, not traditional acute care or primary care, but they are still practicing in a very traditional way in that they're seeing patients one-on-one, they do the consultation in a certain order. Instead of doing that, I thought about where are most people getting their healthcare knowledge? They're getting it through social media, they're getting it from YouTube. And how do you serve that population? Because that's frankly 99% of the population. 1% of them makes it to a precision medicine clinic. So that story of talking to hundreds of other clinicians in the space and leading to this conclusion took a long time, but I think that was valuable in shaping the format of this new platform.
I love that your mindset has shifted here. And as someone who deeply studied the healthcare space and coming to realize that, yes, providers are leaving because they're burnt out, but our population that needs care is elevating. And so there's this big mismatch that's happening right now with the need for care and the providing of care. And that's only going to get worse unless we start figuring out ways, how do we scale? How do we get the care to people, but without requiring the same amount of one-on-one attention? And I think that's where solutions like this could potentially impact millions and millions of people. Yeah. Is that kind of the idea behind it?
Yeah, exactly. So I think another short story that I'll share is I'm part of many forums online. A lot of them, partially because I'm myself a consumer of my own fields. Like I'm a longevity enthusiast myself. And so I want to know what other people are doing. And I noticed that some of these biohackers, so to speak, they're going above and beyond, sometimes in less recommended ways to get their medications. Like people are buying meds from India or other places abroad. And most of the time, these are very educated people who are trying to be careful. They're getting third-party tested products that they buy online. But at the same time, as you can imagine, a lot of bad things could happen. What we have built is a very above board, very legal, not gray area way for these longevity enthusiasts to have easier access to the medications that they're learning about through content creators. Many times they're clinician content creators. And the reason we do that is we see it's not a Wild West in that we're not just enabling people to just buy whatever they want. I could get into that whole very dangerous world where people are kind of, peptide world is an example, where things have gotten a little bit out of control and it's gotten a little bit dangerous. But what we're doing is a much more controlled version of this chaos, so to speak. And yeah, to your point, the entire mission is to democratize access to personalized longevity.
Do you feel, because I know in this space, there are the hyper optimizers, right? And the people that are doing every little thing to try to extend their life. Do you feel that there can be some sort of toxicity in this?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Unfortunately, the people who are most enthusiastic are sometimes at the greatest risk of doing more harm than good. Because if you imagine a person who is 90% optimized, any given intervention is more likely to bring you downwards than upwards. But it's those very personalities who want to seek ever increases in their optimization. And so they're taking greater risks than I think they need to. So it's a personality misfit, so to speak, and it can grow into an obsession. Like we see anxiety. I just recently had a patient who is so fit and got a very large biometrics panel recently and came back with all these worried questions. I was like, frankly, you're fine. It's these things that were tested were a little bit eccentric. And also, if you do enough tests, just by nature of statistics, you're going to have abnormalities. And so it's like you have to talk people down from worrying about things like that. And also with the knowledge that wellness tests, like whether they're blood tests or they're wearable tests, they are truly meant for wellness. However, people are treating them as diagnostics. And the clarity, I think, is important because I actually think there's great potential for things like the Apple Watch, like I'm wearing. It is probably going to be a great diagnostic device soon. And I know they're doing work with blood pressure and sleep apnea and so forth. I think there's high potential. However, the majority of products out there truly are wellness devices. And when you use a wellness device, you're going to get wellness outcomes. People start freaking out about abnormalities they see on these wellness devices and think that they're terribly ill. I'm like, no, this is not clinical grade. It's not supposed to tell you that you have a terrible disease. If things are trending in the wrong direction, that might be a signal to do a clinical test and figure out if there's something there. But people get so worried, especially with the continuous monitoring, with shifts up and down of these biomarkers. And so I think we have to all be very careful. And this is easier said than done, but to recognize that these numbers are not infallible. They're not the truth just in themselves. You have to think about a person's health very holistically.
I agree with you. It's a big reason that I started MedStories because I saw the amount of health anxiety that was being produced through the traditional healthcare system. You get these diagnoses or you have these tests that come up with these scary words. And there is part of me that says, okay, we're in this longevity space and we're doing this large panel. And like you mentioned, you're going to find something that's off. And at what point are we doing more harm than good, where they might start questioning themselves and put themselves into that spiral of anxiety of maybe I am not as healthy as I thought?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I'm totally with you. It's important to have perspective. If you were feeling well enough before you got a test, then unless it's a test that is clinically meant for screening for something very serious like heart disease or cancer, the chances are the test is not going to tell you something that is groundbreaking or that is life-threatening because they're not meant to. But it's so much easier said than done. I think we all need to get over this anxiety over what these numbers mean. My optimism says that the more we get used to all of these tests and wearables, the more we'll learn how to ignore little abnormality here and there and to recognize that certain numbers are quite meaningful and others might just wash out.
Okay, I like that. Yeah, I think the way in which that information is communicated to them is going to be super, super important. So with this, as you guys prepare for your launch, tell me, what is the mission or the vision for the company?
Yeah. CareCore's mission is to improve access to personalized longevity care. So what that means is right now for a person to see a doctor or even find a doctor who is more focused on health optimization rather than just keeping you from dying is exceedingly difficult, especially if you don't have a lot of financial resources. I don't believe that has to be the case. A lot of the things that people do for longevity care don't have to be expensive. Yes, you probably have to pay out of pocket for certain medications and lab tests because they're not traditionally covered by insurance, but they're not on the order of very high numbers. Somebody who is in the upper middle class category can easily afford much of these. And many people, if you are taking a supplement of any kind, could probably replace the supplement budget and spend it towards this kind of care, and you'll get 90% of all the benefit. So that's the idea. How can we get personalized, high health optimization type care to more people? And as part of that, there's a secondary but equally important mission, which is I'm building this for a generation of health professionals, doctors and other clinicians who we're about to face the confrontation of AI taking over everything we do. My co-founder is an AI scientist, an engineer, and so we understand that it's definitely coming. It's not some people are like, oh, AI is not going to take over healthcare. I'm like, yeah, sure, maybe not for certain things and for some time, but for a lot of us, especially those of us who practice knowledge-based medicine, it is already here. Your patients are showing up with AI analyzed lab reports and conclusions. Maybe they're wrong sometimes, but a lot of times they're getting better and better. And so we are creating a world where any clinician or health expert, even if they're not a traditional clinician, it's more about driving them towards the high quality healthcare rather than doing the care themselves, meaning rather than being the person to sign the prescription or to send in that prior auth. That shouldn't be the important part of medicine. It should be holding a person's hand, coaching them, guiding them through confusing information.
Oh man, I wish we blocked off 2 hours of this conversation because I could start going deep into this. I agree with you 100%. I think that this is going to be a really interesting crossroads. Is there something that scares you about or you're concerned about with the introduction of AI into medicine?
I actually am more made trepidatious about AI in society than I am about AI in healthcare, because I think healthcare is so incredibly broken that AI can only do good. It's just the level of good and who the stakeholders are. Do you actually think, and this is a kind of thought that I think most AI entrepreneurs should think about, is in healthcare, which is a very high hurdle, high wall garden, especially if you're working with the big stakeholders like the hospital systems, the big payers, it's very difficult as a startup to win in today's world because the greatest advantage goes to AI infrastructure companies, the OpenAIs, the Anthropics, even the traditional big tech that are also in AI, of course, Microsoft, even NVIDIA. And so when you are a business owner or a startup trying to innovate with AI in traditional healthcare, very likely the infrastructure companies are going to eat your lunch. And I don't know there's a smart way around it. We are at CareCore, we're not in that world. So I'm not battling those same sort of battles, but it is something I think about because I have so many founder friends who are in that more traditional space. And it concerns me because it's an extreme version of what everybody was worried about with the blockchain revolution, where all the value goes to the infrastructure layer rather than the application layer. I think it's going to be even more extreme with AI.
Wow. And so how are you guys planning on utilizing it within CareCore?
Yeah. We are AI first because we believe that everything about healthcare will eventually be automatable, except for the human touch. And so that's actually one of the core beliefs that we built this platform around. So the human touch will be more and more important as we start to AI everything in life. I often go to the example of back in the day, in the medieval times, we used to marry and have children to work our farms and for financial security and physical security. And we don't do that anymore. We marry people out of pleasure and have children for the pleasure of it. And we will always crave a human guidance through all of our healthcare journeys because it's so scary. Like when you're going through something with healthcare, even if an AI system has the right answer, a human helps you through that information and helps you apply that information to your own life. And so what we're doing, another big part of our mission is we're supporting and enabling that human provider and taking away all of the nonsense, essentially is how I think about it. All of the infrastructure nonsense, like setting up the legal entities, following certain regulations and refills and documentation, that sort of a thing. That's what we are building from ground up to be as automated as possible.
It's so cool. I mean, because that is the biggest complaint of providers is we all as healthcare providers want more time with our patients.
Mhm.
And now is coming along a technology that can do all of those repetitive tasks that we are required to do in
Mhm.
order to get insurance reimbursement. We can now outsource that to technology and allow us to hone back in on the human. So
Mhm.
that's where I think that AI is actually going to increase our human connection
Yeah.
if utilized properly,
Yeah.
right? And I
Yeah.
think that is the big key here. And when we're talking about longevity, realistically, there's a big push to saying, why can our healthcare system be preventative? But
Mhm.
at its core, that's what longevity medicine is,
Mhm.
right?
I agree with you because the big question of can we extend maximum lifespan that's the real answer, right? We don't have any real way scientifically to do so. I know there's a lot of researchers trying to figure that out, but I think we're like 30 plus years away from any real solution there. So until then, all of longevity is essentially health span optimization, keeping people as healthy as long as possible. And what's almost a little sad to think about is we're actually just trying to reverse the damages of the last few generations of modern living. My partner is Italian American, and he's got great grandparents who lived into hundreds. And then the next generation, his grandmothers lived into their 90s. And then the next generation, like people were dying early and earlier, is what we found. His father, unfortunately, passed away in his late 50s. And so what is that? It's definitely our modern lifestyle. And I'm not saying it's just our behaviors, it's our ecosystem and everything that comes with it. And so a lot of today's longevity medicine is trying to figure out how can we reverse all of that damage? And I don't have a pithy answer to that because I think it's very complicated.
Yeah, for sure. But solutions like this will allow us to hopefully get there one day, right? This is the next building block to get there.
Mhm.
So say there's a creator out there that says, you know what? Absolutely. I'm in the health and wellness space. Like I would love to be able to expand the services and the value that I offer to my community. What would that process look like if they brought someone on and utilized CareCore?
Yeah. We try to make it as turnkey as possible because our realization was nobody who has any kind of audience, whether you simply have a primary care panel of a few hundred or a massive audience of millions, has the time to set up all of the little things of this type of telemedical e-commerce business. So what we've created is something that's even more turnkey than a Shopify. Shopify, anybody start an e-commerce digital store. And what we're doing is allowing anybody to start a telehealth clinic, except we're not even making it a requirement that you are the clinician because you have a partner clinic, which is our network of 50 state licensed doctors behind the scenes working to do all of the consultations and the prescriptions for you. We layer in so much automation tech as we can to make the job easier for that staff. But for the partner, the creator, the clinician who wants to expand their practice, when they partner with us, all they have to do is make an account. It's like setting up a LinkedIn page, and then you select your area of expertise and the types of interventions that you focus on. So whether it's metabolic health or women's health or women's longevity, you can get very niche specific. We have a curated universal marketplace of items that range from lab testing to medications to more wellness-focused devices, even software like digital calculators, that sort of thing. We ultimately want to make this as extremely turnkey and low maintenance as possible.
Okay, super cool. So if I have a client I want to do some weight loss with, I can enroll and hopefully offer potentially a GLP-1 medication. But I'm not a medical doctor, so I can't prescribe that myself. But through this platform, that can allow my client to get easier access than through a traditional system.
Absolutely. And the way, because I know this is on the top of people's minds, that we make sure that it's all ethical and it makes sense is the partner doesn't have final say over any medical advice because it's for a lot of reasons. We need to make sure that it's that way. And the physician who's overseeing the patient's care has final say. That being said, we do our very best to essentially prepare a consumer or patient for that. So if it's like obvious that they're not going to be a good fit for a certain medication, then hopefully they will figure out through a lot of the design that we've built into the platform that it's not the right thing for them to even pursue.
Okay, got it. So they can sign up for my membership. And then from there, if they want access to the doctor, is it just like a fee for service? How does that work?
Yeah, right now it works as a pay per consultation. And then there's a recurring lower fee for something like a follow-up. But people also have direct access to their prescriber, like they can text them a question. And we're also designing it a way for them to communicate with the pharmacist, for example. So it's all looped in together.
I love it. This is so cool. I can tell you because I've talked to now hundreds of doctors that are looking for ways to create opportunities for themselves. And the biggest three opportunities that I'm seeing them move into is either the aesthetic space, the weight loss space, or longevity space. Those are the top three people that I'm seeing and going into. And they say, how can we do that? Potentially, this could be a solution.
I think so. And I think it's coming from my tech startup background. And build something people want is the motto. You have to be a little bit careful in healthcare because what people want might not be good for them sometimes. And so what we're trying to do is build something people want, but safely. It's kind of our adopted, modified motto. And to your point, sometimes I tell folks that after seeing thousands of patients and talking to so many clinicians, what people really want regarding their health is to look good, to feel good, and then very last, to actually do good for their health. To your point, aesthetics, extremely popular. Weight loss hits a lot of buckets. And then longevity health is root cause to solution. So.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have some time left here, and I want to focus on two last things. First off, I wonder this. How do you, if your family member is currently going through the healthcare system, how do you guide them or encourage them to approach it?
Well, first, it's make sure you have enough time and mental bandwidth to handle the healthcare system. Because I think people treat the traditional healthcare system with the same expectation that they go into any encounter, as if it was the same as going to the store or buying a new computer. Like it is simply not the same. It's a convoluted monster. And so go in first, knowing that you're going to have to pay extra attention. You're going to have to collect more information and do a lot more manual legwork than you believe should be the case. And then the second is collect as much data and documentation for yourself as possible, because it's going to be so hard for you to try and get it later. And also be careful about the person you're speaking to. I think most doctors are great. But it's also great if you have the time, capacity, and resources to get multiple opinions. So we live in a fun world, especially in the longevity world, where traditionally trained physicians have no knowledge of a lot of these topics, like very simply the hormone replacement therapy world for women. We were not taught that because we were all trained in the age of the WHI debacle. And so that's a very big topic on its own. But there's many reasons that a lot of doctors unbelievably still aren't 100% familiar with the GLP-1 agonists, even though it's obviously exploded. So do your own research, get multiple opinions, talk to a lot of people, and be very careful and persistent and advocate for yourself is how I recommend.
Amazing advice. Okay. My last question here is that there are a lot of other healthcare providers that are going to listen to this. And they may be thinking, wow, I wish I could do something more, or maybe I want to start my own thing. What do you want to say to them?
I hear you, first of all, because that's exactly what I wanted very early on in my career. And I think number one is you have to make space for yourself. And I say that because no doctor that I have ever met has a lot of free time. Every clinician, no matter what you're doing, is probably over busy with your work alone and likely with family and other obligations as well. So the very first thing you need to do is to find some way to give yourself space. And the most important first step is you need to understand yourself and your personality before you understand what you can do. So step one, give yourself time and space and learn about yourself, what you really crave to do, what you're interested in naturally without the pressures of everybody knocking down your door. And then step 2 is learn about what's out there, because you don't have to be a content creator or entrepreneur like I am or like what you've done. It's very rewarding for us, but I think there's many paths. You can become a consultant. You could become a public health worker. You could do so many things that are amazing, but you need to learn about those things and think about them carefully first. And then third is trial and pivot. Trial a few things in a small way first. Advise a startup, perhaps advise 10 startups. And then over time, you'll figure out if that's for you, if it's really not. So you can make a much more informed decision about your next path.
Oh, it's incredible advice. I love that so much. So if someone is listening to this and they say, wow, I want to follow her journey, I want to see what's going on, where should they go?
Yeah, you can find me everywhere at Hillary Lynn MD, HILLARYLIN MD, on all the usual platforms. And our website for CareCore is CareCore.io. So with those, you should be able to find out lots more about me. I look forward to connecting with many folks out there.
Amazing. Well, Hillary, I so appreciate it. The innovation that you're bringing to the field is really the kind of things that we need right now. And so I have so much respect for the risk that you're taking on, but also your openness to new ideas, because healthcare needs radical change and we need more people like you.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to share. I appreciate this.
Of course. Thanks for listening to the MedStory Podcast, where we share the stories of the greatest minds in science and medicine. I'm your host, Spencer Locke, with a special thanks to our executive producer, Shaina May. Our music comes from Blue Dot Sessions and the Descript Audio Library. The MedStory Podcast is made possible by MedStory Studios and listeners like you. So if you'd like to support us, please leave a review. It means more than you know. And if you have a story to share or want to produce a podcast of your own, reach out to us at info@medstorymedia.com. We'll see you in the next episode.